Shocking revelation, why Paul's slave title haunts today's believers at 3 clock struck 3. Darkness engulfed the room like a shroud. Just then, a piercing scream echoed down the deserted street, shattering the stillness. Inside the small town of Riverton, murmurings of strange happenings had spiraled into a full-blown frenzy. Ghost stories of Paul the Apostle, whose spiritual legacy and curious title of slave whispered through the night, creeping into the hearts of believers. Shadows flitted in the corners of eyes, and every creak of the floor sounded like a warning. What did it all mean? Why now? People said that if you uttered Paul's title 3 times after midnight, you'd feel the weight of centuries pressing on your soul. Jenny, a lifelong churchgoer, had been the latest victim. Her friends had gathered to swap stories about strange dreams and inexplicable fears that plagued them after the hour when the world turned quiet. Some said they heard voices, desperate and pleading, begging for attention. Was it just their imaginations running wild, or did something more sinister lurk within those words? Unexplainable phenomena plagued the town's believers. Flickering lights, unnerving shadows, you name it. Just last week, a child claimed to have seen Paul in the church basement, face ashen, eyes hollow as if he carried the world's burdens. The children laughed at first but fell silent as they felt a chill sweep through the air. Parents dismissed their tales as nightmares, but deep down, doubt gnawed at them. An undercurrent of fear flooded their community. This wasn't a simple folklore, it felt real, terrifying. Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. And then it happened. One fateful night, as fog rolled in and shrouded Riverton in mystery, a few brave souls decided to confront the haunting. They gathered outside the old church, hearts racing, heavy breaths mingling with the night air. Each whispered name hung in the silence like a thread, taunting, luring them deeper. Could they summon Paul himself? What would he reveal? The air crackled with anticipation, tension so thick it made their chests tighten. As they stood there, just outside the church doors, light flickered, and then went out. In that moment of fear, someone whispered, "What if he never left?" And the night answered back with stillness, leaving them teetering on the edge of something unspeakable. What awaited them in the dark? Only time would tell. The silence stretched, wrapping around the group like thick fog. Eyes darted nervously from face to face, uncertainties brewing in gut-bending waves. Each step toward the church door felt like a descent into the unknown. They huddled closer together, instinctively seeking comfort in shared fear. Nick, the self-proclaimed leader among them, steeled himself. Let us go in. We can't turn back now," he said, fingers trembling as he gripped the handle. The door creaked open, revealing the hollow darkness within. It felt alive, as if it had been holding its breath, waiting for them. Shadows danced against the stained glass windows as moonlight fought its way through the centuries-old panes. With each step inside, the air thickened, weaving an unsettling chill through everyone's bones. Dust motes floated like restless spirits in the beams of light, their presence both delicate and oppressive. "Did you hear that?" Sarah gasped, clutching Rachel's arm. They paused, their hearts hammering, breaths mingling in the cold air. In the distance, from the depths of the sanctuary, a faint whisper trickled through the silence. It sounded almost human, yet bizarrely disembodied, echoing with the weight of sorrow. "Paul," a voice coaxed. It slipped around them, weaving its way into their minds. The group exchanged terrified glances, unsure of whether to laugh, to cry, or to scream. Nick pushed forward, stepping into the aisle, the rough wooden pews looming like sentinels on either side. Ignoring the chill creeping up his spine, he shouted, "Paul, we've come to talk." The words lingered, hanging thickly in the air. But no answer came, just the echo of his call slipping into the recesses of the empty church, swallowed by darkness. Then, just as doubt crept in, a shape materialized at the altar. It was a figure cloaked in shadows, its outline almost human but somehow not entirely there. The tension in the room thickened, squeezing the breath from their lungs. They could hardly focus, hearts racing, panic blurring their thoughts. Paul's Sarah whimpered. She could hardly grasp reality anymore, the weight of history possessing her. Are you here to help? The figure shifted, slowly revealing the contours of a face pale, worn, eyes glinting with ancient knowledge. It held a gaze, one filled with echoes of untold stories and burdens that vibrated in the air. No one dared to breathe. Is this what you seek? The voice deep, resonating seemed to vibrate within their very souls. To understand why I remained. Will you accept the truth, or will you turn away? Just then, the light sputtered back to life, banishing the shadows to the corners of the room. The figure flickered, as if caught between worlds. Panic gripped them, and in a split second, instinct took over. Run! Rachel screamed, her feet crashing against the floor as they bolted toward the exit, hearts pounding like war drums in their chests. The whispers intensified, crescendoing into a cacophony of voices that echoed behind them. Were they pleading? Taunting? Out they scrambled, collapsing outside into the fog, gasping for breath, their minds racing. I can't go back there. Jenny cried, shaking. But in her chest, a knot of curiosity twisted what truth had been offered in that church. As they caught their breaths, one thing was irrefutably clear. They'd awakened something. Something that wouldn't go back to sleep so easily, but before they could process what just happened, a chilling laugh erupted from within the church. It seeped through the cracks in the old wooden door, a sound both haunting and mocking. Come back, the voice echoed. And I will show you what would they find if they returned. Would they dare to uncover the lingering truth that danced just beyond their grasp? Tension hung thick in the damp air as the group hovered in the fog, breaths coming in raspy gasps. The haunting laughter of the shadowy figure still echoed in their minds. It was a sound that drove ice into their veins. What was that? Jenny whispered, fear lacing her voice. I don't know, Nick said, his hands digging into his pockets, nails biting into skin. He looked toward the church, a flickering light beckoning them back. Its allure was both terrifying and irresistible. But we can't just leave it like this. Rachel, still trembling, shot him a glance. You have to be kidding, right? That was something beyond our understanding. But something inside Nick pulsed with urgency. What if Paul really is in there? What if we can help him? The words felt hollow as he spoke them, but they wrapped around them like a lifeline in deep waters. He could sense the moral conflict swirling among them. Help. Or get ourselves killed. Sarah snapped, her panic turning to anger. The fog swirled around her, teasing shadows at the edges of her vision. Do you really want to find out what else is waiting for us in there? Nick clenched his jaw. I'll go back alone if I have to. There was a long silence, the thick fog enveloping them heavy and suffocating. But one by one, their eyes flickered with a mix of dread and determination. I'm in, Rachel spoke, voice firm yet shaky. I need to know. I can't forget how he called out. We owe him that much. Caught in their tangled emotions, the others reluctantly nodded, propelled by a blend of curiosity and adrenaline. The group started back toward the church, each step heavier than the last. The fog seemed to swirl around them, alive, as if it were sentient and aware of their resolve. A creeping dread clawed at their insides, but their need for answers overshadowed every instinct caution had ignited. They pushed the creaking door open, the very motion heavy with dread. Inside, the flickering lights blinked weakly, shadows stretching long across the old wood and stone. The whispers began again, softer this time, intertwining with their thoughts. Look! Nick pointed toward the altar, where the figure awaited. It had returned, a dark silhouette against the dim light. Paul. Rachel whispered, stepping forward, the name trembling on her lips. The figure shifted, and suddenly the room felt suffocatingly close. You return. Do you seek the truth of my existence? The voice washed over them like cold water, and they shuddered collectively. I just want to understand. Rachel shouted, desperation spilling over. The others flinched, unsure if they had crossed a boundary. Perhaps they had, but it was too late now. They were trudging deeper. Very well, Paul's form shifted, and in an instant, they were engulfed in his memories, the weight of despair, the echoes of chains, the feel of cold stone walls. It was overwhelming, a torrent of past anguish unleashed upon them. Visions flashed violently, images of pain and pleading filled the air. Nick staggered back, his mind racing. What is this? It is my fate. Paul declared, his voice now a guttural roar. To remain bound in this place, a warning of humanity's darkness. You must learn from my chains, or you too will find yourselves enslaved. The group gasped. Nick could feel the harsh pounding in his chest, the raw fear that pulsed through them. We can help you. He shouted back, foolishly hopeful. Just tell us how. But the shadows flickered, and with them, the whispers piled up again, twisting into chaos. Then, in a heartbeat, everything went silent. The air turned electric, their skin prickled with a sense of looming dread. Where was Paul now? And as the church began to shake, the glass shattered, echoing like a series of gunshots. What is happening? Sarah shrieked, panic taking over. Get out! Nick yelled, pulling at Rachel's arm as the floor trembled beneath their feet. But it was too late. As they stumbled for the exit, a voice boomed above the chaos. Your choice has been made, now face the consequences. The darkness surged as they lunged through the door, leaving the church in a frenzy of noise and despair. As they fell outside, breathless and wide-eyed in the fog, there was no relief. Only the weight of what lay ahead. Did we really help him? Jenny panted, her voice quaking with uncertainty. Or did we just stir up something worse? A low rumble vibrated the ground beneath their feet, a prelude to the coming storm. And above it all, a chilling whisper lingered in the air, come back, I will not be denied. What threshold had they crossed? What darkness awaited them now? The ground trembled as the group stumbled away from the church, their hearts racing and breaths quickening in the misty night. Nick glanced over his shoulder, the shadow of the church looming behind them like a specter. We can't just leave it like this. He shouted over the growing rumble beneath their feet. Then what do you propose we do? Sarah was sharp, eyes wide with a mix of fear and frustration. Go back and ask him how to break whatever curse he is under. You think he is going to give us a nice little map? We have to. Nick started, but Rachel cut him off. Stop. Just stop. She cried, her voice cracking. We've already awakened something we don't understand. We need to get away from here. Each pulse of the ground was matched by a surge of icy dread. The fog thickened around them, wrapping around their limbs, drawing them back as if it had a mind of its own. Jenny felt clumps of fear knotting in her stomach. They needed to paste together some sense of clarity, but all they had were questions without answers. Look, Rachel said, struggling to keep her voice steady. If we stay here, we're just asking for trouble. Trouble? Nick repeated, breathless. You think what we just experienced was trouble? What if it gets worse? What if he really is a prisoner? The thought sent a shiver down their spines. They felt a powerful pull toward the chilling chorus of whispers echoing in their minds. Guys, we have to at least wait for dawn, Jenny whispered, glancing to where the horizon was barely visible through the fog. Maybe we'll see something in the daylight. Maybe it'll all make sense. No. Nick's voice was sharp, igniting their fear again. This isn't about waiting or making sense. We have to plan our next move. As he spoke, an unnatural chill swept over them. The tremors intensified, and the ground shifted, cracking beneath their feet. It felt as if the very earth wanted to swallow them whole. "Let us go!" Sarah screamed, pushing through the fog, urging them forward. They ran, feet pounding against the uneven ground, the shadows following them like a dark cloud. But the whispers hung heavily in the air, pulling at their thoughts. Suddenly, they reached a familiar path that opened into a clearing. It was the old cemetery, overgrown and forgotten. Gravestones stood crookedly, silent sentinels in the fog. "This place, it feels wrong," Jenny muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. Nick hesitated, glancing at the shadows weaving between the stones. "Paul needs us, but what if we're wrong? What if we're just playing into whatever horrible game this is?" Just then, a low wail pierced the air, a mournful sound that sent icy tendrils crawling up their spines. "It's him," Rachel gasped. The realization washed over them like cold water, a wave of dread crashing over any flickering hope left in their hearts. Nick turned to Rachel, desperation mingling with horror in his eyes. "What do we do?" As if in response, the ground shuddered violently, sending them all tumbling onto the damp earth. The fog closed in like a suffocating blanket. Sprawled in the dirt, they heard Paul's voice again, dark and echoing. "Your choices echo through eternity, you cannot escape your fate." Heart racing, Nick crawled frantically back to his feet. "We have to get out now. This is getting worse." But as Sarah reached for him, the fog swirled tighter, shapes undulating between the headstones, whispering secrets of despair and fear. "Something is watching us," she murmured, her eyes wide with panic. A sudden flash of light illuminated the clearing. It flickered like a beacon, revealing forms cloaked in shadow behind the stones. They weren't alone. "What's happening?" Jenny whimpered, moving closer to Rachel. "Run!" Nick yelled, but the shadows began to step forward, faces hidden in darkness, reaching out with ethereal hands as the air thickened with unresolved dread. Panic erupted, and they bolted toward the cemetery exit, but a barrier closed in around them, the whispers growing louder, pushing panic deep into their chests. "Go!" Nick stormed ahead, but the shadows moved with them, slinking closer. "All paths lead back to him," a voice stole their breath away, chilling them to the bone. "And all debts must be paid." As they neared the exit, shrieks pierced the air, more voices, entangled in an agony they couldn't see but could feel closing in. They barreled forward, the trees becoming a maze twisting ahead of them. But in that moment of sheer panic, everything went silent. The world fell eerily still. "What just happened?" Rachel's voice broke through the tension, but before any of them could respond, the light from the cemetery flickered once more, illuminating a terrifying silhouette standing at the edge, eyes glowing with an unholy fire. "Come back, you'll soon understand what chains truly bind you." Stuck between pursuit and confusion, they stood frozen. Was escaping this nightmare even possible? And just then, the ground beneath their feet started to crack open, darkness swelling from the chasm like an echo of judgment. What awaited them at the edge of this crumbling reality? The cracking earth trembled beneath them, a growl that rumbled through their bones. The horrifying silhouette at the clearing's edge lingered, eyes glimmering like cursed gems, locking onto Nick with a predatory hunger. "You cannot hide from the past," the voice echoed, deeper now, reverberating in the cavern of their fear. "Move! Now!" Nick roared, adrenaline surging through him. He grabbed Jenny's arm, yanking her back from the precipice where darkness coiled. They stumbled forward, hearts racing, twisting around fractured gravestones. Lost in a labyrinth of sorrowful memories, every breath felt like a plunge into ice. The shadows clung to them, hands reaching, whispering torment and regrets, clawing at their sanity. Rachel was gasping, panicking with each echoing footstep. "We can't outrun this. It knows us. Shut up and keep running." Nick shouted, his voice raw with dread. He pushed harder, leading them through the tangled branches, the whispers sharpening into something like laughter, ringing in their ears, taunting them. Sarah tripped, her foot catching on a hidden root. "Wait!" We can't leave her. Rachel spun around instinctively, her face contorted with fear and urgency. Don't! Jenny screamed. We can't stop. But it was too late, the shadows surged, swarming toward Sarah. No! 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 Nick turned back, unable to watch, but he felt the pull of his friends dragging him down. He reached for Sarah, just as her scream sliced through the air, a sharp note of terror, then came silence. The air felt electric, charged with unspoken dread. Nick's heart thundered in his chest. He forced himself to face the void where Sarah had been. She's gone, Rachel whispered, her words breaking the silence like glass. Don't say that. Nick shot back, desperation drowning his reason. They couldn't abandon anyone, not now. We have to keep moving. We can't let whatever that is take us too. But the shadows had begun to retreat, they coiled back like snakes, leaving only an unmistakable mark of dread. An eerie stillness replaced the chaos, punctuated only by the broken gasps of the group. Where do we even go? Jenny's voice trembled, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. What if it's waiting for us? We need to find shelter, Nick replied, scanning their surroundings as something deep within him flickered to life, a desperate urge to fight, not flee. Until now, they had navigated through chaos, but it felt like this night was only beginning. Through the fog, a shape emerged, a stone archway, old and crumbling, wrapped in ivy and time. That way. Rachel pointed, hope flickering in my eyes. There. Maybe we can find something an exit. Nick steered them toward the archway, each step pounding with the rhythm of dread. Entering the passage felt final, as if crossing a line they wouldn't return from. The darkness inside throbbed, alive with anticipation, an echo of something that had been waiting. The air turned frigid as they stepped inside. Shadows danced along the walls like watchers, every breath seeming to draw them nearer. What is this place? Jenny mumbled, voice trailing off into the suffocating void. I don't know, Nick admitted, trembling against the cold creeping into his bones. But if we're going to find Paul, he might be here. A clattering sound echoed through the archway, and they stopped, panic bubbling anew. Something was moving in the darkness. Did you hear that? Rachel hissed. Yeah, Nick nodded, throat dry. We have to be quiet. It could be whatever he summoned. In that dense silence, a shifting from the shadows took form, a figure emerging from behind the forgotten relics of the past. The figure was a haunting reflection of Paul, but twisted, eyes sunken, expression tormented. Help me, the voice rasped, barely more than a whisper. Is it you? Nick's heart raced. A rush of conflicting emotions gripped him. Was this real? Was this another trap? The figure shifted closer, its thin frame bathed in flickering light. You must face the darkness together. Before he could react, the walls pulsated, and an overwhelming force rushed through, drawing them all toward the figure, toward the truth lurking in the shadows. Suddenly, the ground beneath shifted again as apparitions materialized, faces twisted in agony, wailing in a cacophony of sorrow. What is happening? Rachel cried, gripping Jenny's hand. We need to know, Nick said, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. We can't let it take us too. Whatever this is, whatever fate Paul is bound to, we need to confront it. But with every heartbeat, the shadows clawed at their resolve. As they stepped deeper, would they uncover the truth, or would they become lost, just like so many before them? What awaited them in the heart of the darkness? The dark tunnel pulsed, enveloping them in chilling whispers that twisted through the air like a serpent. Nick's heart pounded louder than the shadows that crawled toward him. Each step felt like entering a void. Hold on tight, he murmured, squeezing Jenny's hand. Rachel's grip was frantic, her breath shallow with fear. The presence of Paul's tortured form hovered like a tightening noose, each echo whispering secrets only the damned could know. Why are you like this? Nick demanded, locking eyes with the distorted reflection of his friend. What happened to you, Paul? Reckoning awaits, Paul rasped, the shrillness of his voice melding with distant screams. It sent a visceral chill down their spines. As Paul moved closer, the twisted features morphed into recognition, the same boy who had laughed into the summer sun, now a specter cloaked in shadows. You have to face your sins. Get away from him. Rachel shouted, pushing her way to the front, desperate to protect the image of who Paul used to be. The shadows around them recoiled slightly, but Paul remained there, an anchor to a terror they couldn't escape. Stop. You don't understand. Nick's voice faltered, barely piercing through the thrum of their fear. We didn't mean to leave you. We were supposed to be together. Paul's voice quaked, flickers of human emotion bleeding through the tainted form. Then, a shattering wail emerged from every corner, and the air thickened with despair, wrapping around them like a suffocating veil. They were not alone. Horrific figures began to take shape around the chamber, their mouths twisted in eternal screams, eyes reflecting lives once lived now lost in a sea of anguish. You left us, one figure muttered, voice splintering into eeriness. You abandoned us. No. Nick shouted, shaking his head fiercely. We tried to save you. You have to believe me. You are as guilty as the rest, another specter whispered, its gaze boring deep into Nick's soul. You all are. Suddenly, a grotesque visage lunged toward them, inches from Nick's face. It twisted, grasping at his memories, pulling him into a vortex of regret. Images flashed, arguments, moments of betrayal, and the weight of friendship rejected. He staggered backward, retreating into Rachel and Jenny, hope fraying at their last strands. Get away. Just leave us alone. Jenny cried, covering her eyes, but the darkness only laughed, eerily echoing their agony. Each apparition an embodiment of their fears, their mistakes. Dive deeper into the pain, Paul encouraged, his voice an eerie melody. Only then can you escape. No. We don't have to. Nick yelled, resolute. This isn't real. You're not real. But the shadows crept closer, their hands clawing at his sanity. He could feel the weight of their expectations, their shattered hopes pressing against his chest, filling him with despair. Face it, Nick. Paul demanded, now more like a haunting specter than a friend. Face what you've done, what we all did. Help us help. Rachel spat, fear melting into anger. You want us to join your damnation? No, Nick realized, new determination rising. We want to just embrace this darkness. We'll fight it. As their energies entwined, they steadied each other, forming a barricade against the encroaching void. If we face it together, we can break this cycle. Nick urged, gripping Rachel's and Jenny's hands tighter. The shadows recoiled, sensing their resolve, and Paul's expression flickered, uncertainty crossing his distorted face. Together this may work. As they stepped forward, their voices rising in unison, a sound erupted, a bold proclamation against the darkness. We are not afraid. Suddenly, a blinding light burst from the core of their joined hands, illuminating the chamber in hues of vibrant hope and fierce determination. The apparitions shrieked in horror, retreating into the shadows as the light pushed back against the darkness. Just as the light enveloped them, the ground gave way, shifting and transforming. The echoes grew louder, more insistent. Above the chaos, one line etched itself into Nick's mind: you can't escape the truth. Then, everything around them shattered like glass, sending shards of reality cascading into a whirlwind of color and fear. The light pulsed, vibrating through their bodies, and Nick realized their journey was far from over. What's the truth? Jenny whispered, voice barely able to rise above the tumbling chaos. Where are we headed? Rachel shouted, scanning the uncertainty closing in again. The light flickered, revealing glimpses of a new world spiraling around them. They were not safe yet, and the shadows lurked just beyond the edges of the light. The battle for their survival was only beginning. What awaited them in this new realm, and would confronting the truth finally set them free, or would it bind them deeper into horror? The light began to pulse more violently, transforming their surroundings into a kaleidoscope of swirling colors and shapes. Nick felt his stomach drop, as if they were being catapulted through a tunnel of pure energy. The whispers grew louder, drowning out their thoughts. What is happening? Rachel screamed, clutching at her head as the noise assaulted them. I don't know. But focus. Nick shouted, trying to keep his voice steady over the chaos. We have to stay together. Just as he spoke, the vibrant hues faded, replaced by a sullen gray. The ground solidified beneath their feet as they landed unceremoniously in a desolate landscape. Dim smoke hung low, and shadows flickered like remnants of a haunting memory. Distant echoes of sorrowful wails floated through the gloom, twisting around them like invisible fingers. Nick looked around, heart racing. They stood in a grim valley, draped in despair. Where are we? Jenny whispered, eyes wide with disbelief. It feels like a graveyard, Rachel replied, scanning the horizon. But not just for the dead, for everything we've lost. Ahead, a broken sign swung lazily in the wind. The letters barely clung to life, but Nick made out the words, "Welcome to echoes of the past." A chill raced down his spine. What does it mean? Jenny asked, her voice quaking. I think Nick hesitated, the weight of realization settling in. I think it's a place where our past mistakes come to haunt us. Each echo is an event, a choice we regret. As if summoned by their thoughts, the shadows swarmed around them, draped in old memories too painful to bear. They formed images, blurry yet vivid, reenacting scenes of heartbreak and guilt. Nick saw himself yelling at Paul, the hurt etched on his friend's face. Rachel pushed someone away, fear in her eyes. Jenny stood alone in a corner, the smile she wore so often replaced with confusion. Stop it! Nick shouted, anger blooming within him. We get it. We've made mistakes. But the echoes only grew louder. You abandoned us. They howled, voices layered upon one another, creating a chaotic symphony of regret. No, we tried. Rachel cried, pinching her eyes shut against the onslaught of guilt that as the spectral forms twisted around them. One figure stood out. A shadowed version of Paul emerged from the horde, its face a grotesque blend of grief and fury. Every feature held a story of betrayal. You left me to suffer, he whispered, voice thick with sorrow. And now we all pay. Nick's chest tightened, guilt washing over him like a tidal wave. I never meant for it to end this way, Paul. I thought you'd come back. The apparition laughed cruelly, a hollow sound that echoed against the barren landscape. You thought wrong. Enough. Jenny's voice cut through the torment. We can't change the past. But we can change what happens next. The darkness flickered slightly, responding to her defiance. Nick grabbed her hand, feeling the hope radiating from her words. Jenny's right. We can't let them win. We have to own it and rise above it. As if fueled by their resolve, the shadows wavered. The air started to crackle with energy, the echoes transforming into whispers of support, building a crescendo of strength around them. Together. Rachel said, entranced as they locked hands. We can rewrite this. The ground began to shake, the walls of their torment crumbling. Paul's figure lunged forward, but they held strong, their combined will illuminating the gloom. We are not defined by our past. Nick yelled, his voice a battle cry. We are more than our regrets. In response, a blinding light exploded from within them, engulfing the remnants of shadows. For a moment, Nick felt an unexpected warmth, a sense of clarity amidst the chaos. Then, an unbearable pressure pushed back against them, as if reality itself protested their stance. What if we're wrong? Rachel gasped, uncertainty clawing at her stomach. As the blast of light faded, they found themselves standing at the edge of a cliff, the world plunging into darkness below. What now? Nick asked, peering into the abyss, as the whispers around them grew quieter, replaced by a stillness that felt anything but safe. And far beneath the churning void, something stirred, awakening with a vengeance. Why does it feel like something is waiting for us down there? Jenny whispered, trembling. With a pounding heart, Nick turned back to the edge, the uncertainty twisting in his gut. Is the truth down there waiting to engulf them, or will it finally grant them the freedom they seek? The cliff loomed ominously, a jagged edge of reality that hung over the dark chasm. Nick's breath quickened. The silence was deafening, pressing down on them with the weight of countless unresolved choices. A distant rumble echoed from the abyss, a reminder that whatever lay below was not merely a void, but something awakened, something hungering. We can't just stand here, Rachel urged, her voice a blend of fear and determination. We have to make a choice. Choice? What kind of choice? Jenny asked, glancing at the swirling darkness beneath them. Do we jump? Do we wait? What if it's worse down there? Nick opened his mouth to respond, but the echoes of their past flooded back, crashing into him like waves. Images of their mistakes flared in rapid succession, broken friendships, lost opportunities, moments drowned in self-doubt. Each memory twisted in his mind, accusing him, demanding to be faced. Maybe we need to confront whatever is down there, he said finally, though his heart raced at the thought. Maybe that's how we find freedom. No, Jenny shook her head, eyes widening. What if it consumes us? What if we don't survive it? Then we die trying, Nick replied, the fire of conviction igniting in his chest. I can't live like this haunted by shadows. Same, Rachel whispered, stepping closer to the edge. We either jump into the unknown or stay here, trapped by our pasts forever. A fear edged into his mind. What if confronting their past only led to more suffering? But then, what choice did they really have? Together? He asked, eyes locking with those of his friends. Together, they echoed, solidarity glowing in the darkness. With one last deep breath, they stepped forward. As they plunged into the abyss, the air shimmered around them, swirling with the remnants of their past. The moment felt as if time had stopped. They were suspended in dark water, unable to see or feel their surroundings. Then, the landscape shifted once more, and they landed softly on solid ground, a sunken cavern pulsing with a rustic light. It smelled of damp earth mixed with burnt memories, the air heavy with anticipation. Musky shadows danced at the edges, whispering sweet seduction and bitter regret. What is this place? Jenny murmured, anxiety draping over her shoulders. I don't know, Nick admitted, heart racing. But we need to keep moving. They took a few steps, tension palpable, until a deeper growl rumbled through the air. It echoed with a malevolent energy, vibrating through their bones. Suddenly, the wall before them rippled like fabric and morphed into a doorway, revealing a shimmering expanse of light. What is that? Rachel asked, pointing. I don't know, but it's calling us, Nick breathed, unable to tear his gaze from the entrance. It looks like hope. Just as they prepared to step closer, the shadows around the cavern coalesced, morphing into hazy figures that circled them. Each one bore the semblance of regret, of dark times past. Paul emerged again, his face twisted in anguish. You think you can escape? He spat, eyes blazing with fury. You can't just run from your mistakes. Paul! Nick shouted, stepping forward. We're not running. We want to confront them. In that moment, the echoes hushed, anticipation hanging thick in the air. The shadows shifted, revealing glimpses of their past intertwined with the light ahead. Memories flickered, a dance of despair and potential intertwined. Do you really believe you can face what lies beyond? Paul's voice dripped with venom. You still don't see it, do you? See what? Nick demanded, frustration boiling over. But as he spoke, the shadows shrieked, a cacophony that crashed against his defenses. Pain resonated within him, a tight knot forming in his throat. The ground began to tremble, and the doorway pulsed erratically, as if responding to their emotions. Nick! Something is coming. Jenny shrieked, eyes wide with panic. The walls began to close in, darkness swirling in a frenzy around them. Something was awakening, something ancient and dangerous. With his heart pounding, Nick knew they couldn't turn back. Now. But what awaited them on the other side? Or was this just the beginning of a nightmare they couldn't escape? The shadows roared, and the dark cavern replied, waiting for them to make their choice again. Would they face what lurked within, or would it all consume them whole? The shadows coiled around them, pulsating with a life of their own, as the darkness deepened. Nick felt a hot surge of panic, gripping his chest tightly, as if he were drowning in an ocean of doubt. He could barely catch his breath. Do we run? Rachel's voice trembled as she scanned the encroaching darkness, her wide eyes reflecting the flickering light of hope just beyond the doorway. No, he replied firmly, though his own conviction wavered. We can't let fear dictate our next move. But as they stood on the precipice of their pasts, the figures around them shifted, quivering with a restless energy. Paul's silhouette lingered, his expression morphing from rage to contempt. They know you, he hissed, the shadows whispering in agreement. Every failure, every heartache, it's all part of you now. You think you can just step into that light and forget? Nick swallowed hard, the lump in his throat nearly choking him. We're trying to understand. To confront what you represent. Paul laughed, a hollow sound that echoed against the cavern walls. Understand? You're not ready. You're still shackled to your fears. You think light can save you? You're deluding yourselves. You will be consumed. The tremors intensified, the ground erupting in jagged cracks as whispers turned into tormenting shouts. The cavern felt alive, breathing in their despair, relishing in their agony. Jenny clasped Rachel's wrist, eyes wide with desperation. Look. Rachel pointed, her voice rising above the chaos. The doorway pulsed rhythmically, illuminating the cavern in explodes of gold and silver. It was a beacon, yet riddled with uncertainty. I want to let him stop us. Nick shouted, the words rising from the heart of his fear. Something shifted within him, igniting a spark of determination. Are you ready? He asked, looking at his friends. The question hung thick in the air, heavy with the weight of their combined pasts. I don't know, Jenny said, her voice small. What if this light is worse than the darkness? The shadows began to wail, a mixture of laughter and sorrow swirling around them. Nick felt his resolve falter as memories came flooding back, the abandoned projects, the friendships betrayed, all the moments that felt insurmountable. But he forced himself to remember why they had jumped into this abyss. They wanted freedom. They needed closure. We're not weak, Nick asserted, gaining strength from the fire inside him. We embrace our mistakes. We take the pain and transform it into power. Paul can't hold us. As though summoned by his words, turbulent energies swept through the caverns, binding the shadows tight. Paul shrieked, his form flickering like a dying flame, unable to hold his ground. Suddenly, the swirling lights intensified, shooting beams towards the dark figures. They cried out, a chaotic blend of torment and fear, while Nick's heart raced. His instincts urged him forward. Now! He yelled, grasping Rachel's hand, pulling Jenny with him. Together, they dashed toward the beckoning light. The shadows reached desperately for them, claws of memory and regret, lashing out in a frenzied attempt to hold them back. But with sheer will, they surged past the darkness, surrounding themselves with the searing warmth of hope. As the light enveloped them and the shadows screamed in agony, Nick felt a release, like chains falling away. Just as they crossed the threshold into the blinding brightness, a deafening roar ascended. You can escape me. Echoed across the cavern, a chilling finality resonating within them. What met them on the other side was a dazzling world, vibrant yet destabilizing. But as the blinding light began to fade, Nick's heart sank. There before them lay something entirely unexpected, reflections of their deepest regrets cast in radiant clarity. Did they truly escape? Or had they simply traded one nightmare for another? He hesitated, peering into the light, but as he did, a realization cut through the confusion. this was only the beginning of a far more profound journey. What awaited them now would test not only their courage but also the very fabric of who they believed themselves to be. With hearts pounding, they braced for what lay ahead. Would facing the relentless truth of their pasts grant them liberation, or would it shatter everything they held dear? In the blinding light, the world was alive, flickering with memories wrapped in hues of gold and silver. As the brilliance faded, a landscape unfolded their own pasts, alive with moments forgotten yet agonizingly familiar. Nick, Jenny, and Rachel stood together, breathless, surrounded by vibrant scenes that seemed to pulse with emotion. "Is this us?" Jenny whispered, her voice trembling. It was as if they had stepped into a living tapestry of their choices, each thread revealing the struggles, victories, and failures that shaped them. "Everything we've tried to forget, it's all here," Rachel said, her voice a mix of fear and awe as she reached out to touch a scene where Nick and Paul laughed at a park, sunlight dancing through the branches overhead. The joy was palpable, wrapping around them like a safety blanket, yet it faded, replaced by darker images, arguments, tears, pride. "This is where we need to confront it," Nick breathed, glancing back at his friends, determination settled deep in the pit of his stomach. "We have to face it head-on." As they moved deeper into the memories, a hulking figure emerged from the backdrop of their lives. It was Paul, transformed into an amalgamation of pain and regret. His features were twisted, eyes reflecting every betrayal, every moment when they had chosen themselves over him. "You think this is an escape?" he boomed, echoing with despair and anger. "You're only revisiting the past that bound you." "No." Nick shouted back, voice trembling yet resolute. "We're here to break free. This time, we face it with open hearts, not fear." Rachel and Jenny steadied themselves beside him, holding tight to the sense of unity that had ignited their defiance. "You aren't a twisting shadow anymore, Paul," Rachel called out. "You're someone we loved, and we won't let guilt keep you captive." With each word, the scenes around them shimmered, showing both light and dark, a luminous reminder that pain and joy coexist. They stepped forward, intertwined, ready to confront every moment of pain together. Paul's twisted form flickered, a battle swirling within him. "You think you can just wipe it all away? Forget what you abandoned? But what we feel is real." Jenny countered fiercely. "You taught us how to live, to rise above the shadows. We won't let your pain consume us. We'll set you free." The air around them grew dense with palpable energy, shadows swirling like a violent tornado. Nick could feel the pull toward despair, but they formed a barrier, blocking it out with their love and acceptance of what had passed. Then, in a surge of strength, they stepped toward Paul, their hearts pounding in unison. "We don't deny our pasts. We've learned from them," Nick shouted, desperation and passion surging through him. In that instant, the darkness recoiled, ripping apart like paper. The shadows began to unravel, falling like ash. Paul's features softened, tears glistening in his spectral eyes. You forgive me?" "Yes." Rachel cried, stepping closer. "And yourself? You're not defined by what has happened. We're here, all of us together. We're not running from the truth anymore." As they held on to each other tightly, a bright warmth enveloped Paul, illuminating his features with love. The chains that bound him began to dissolve, falling away like forgotten burdens. Maybe I can find peace," he whispered, voice rich with wonder. With a final breath, the last shadows melted away, replaced by brilliance that flooded in, washing over them like a cleansing tide. It was a sensation of release, and the weight of accumulation, the hurt, the fear, the sorrow vanished in the light that the brilliance faded into a soft, radiant glow, the stark landscape transformed into a beautiful meadow, colorful and lush. Nick, Jenny, and Rachel found themselves standing in a place free from the chains of their past, surrounded by warmth and serenity. "Is this it? Are we free?" Jenny asked, her heart pounding, eyes gleaming with hope. "Yes," Nick breathed, looking around them. "But this is just the start. We carry these lessons now, turning shadows into strength. Paul's true essence shimmered, light coalescing around him, radiant and peaceful. He smiled, a genuine warmth breathing life into their spirits. You freed me and yourselves. Remember this moment. As he faded into a sea of golden light, warmth enveloped the three friends. Tears streamed down Jenny's face as she clutched her friends. We did it, she murmured, all brightening her voice. Yes, we did, Rachel smiled softly. Together. This was the moment. It embodied everything they had fought for. Each of them held a vital piece of the journey they had shared, proof that truth, entwined with love and courage, could conquer even the darkest shadows. Now it was time to step forward into a world full of possibility, leaving the haunting echoes behind. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive journey. This is the moment to show your support. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your engagement makes all the difference to keep these stories alive.